Good evening. Nice to see you all. And today we're going to look at authority over nature. So how we've talked over the last few weeks how God enables us to pray for people for healing. And last week we had great testimony, didn't we, from Jean, and how her hearing has been coming back. It's an amazing story. And this week we're going to look at authority over nature. And so it's obviously been, Mother Nature's been in the news a lot the last few weeks, hasn't it? So I wanted to take us through some of those bigger natural disasters or natural events as well. Before you came in, Hannah and I, we had a discussion that we often have, haven't we, where I say, do we have to sing songs from the 1990s? It's so old, Hannah. And then I look at my notes for today, and Hannah, you'll never forgive me for this. My first illustration is 1,000 years old. So I'm complaining about a song that's 20 years old, and here we are, an example that's 1,000 years old. So in 1016, here in Southampton, allegedly, King Canute, do you know the story? He was a good-looking, strong, handsome Viking who came and invaded Wessex, and he was such a man. He was a man of mans. You know, everyone looked up to him, a great leader. That his entourage said, you know what, King, you're so great. You could tell the waves to go back and they'd follow your command. And he was a Christian. He's like, no, that's nonsense. God is the one who's in charge of things. And so here in Southampton, 1,001 years ago, allegedly, he went down to, you know where Canute Road is, down in town. So Canute Road, named after King Canute, when there was still sea there, he put down his chair and he tried to, in front of his entourage, say, right tide, stop coming in. And then it washed in onto him. And he said, see, I told you God's in charge. So that's King Canute, and that was his experience. When you think about it now, we know a lot more about science than 1,000 years ago, don't we? And this is our home, isn't it? This is the Milky Way. This is our little dot in the universe. And now, when you think about it, any idea that we could know what the weather's going to be like on Friday is ridiculous, isn't it, when you've got all of this happening? In our minds, we still think we live on a flat earth, don't we? We still think that the environment and everything around us is safe, and we forget that we're on this ball of fire rotating around another ball of fire at 6,000 miles an hour, and we expect to have strength and stability in our lives. It's nonsense, isn't it? When you think about it, this is where we live. And so the astronomer himself, an American astronomer, not one of the most famous ones, but he said this: far better it seems to me in our vulnerability is to look death in the eye and to be grateful every day for the brief but magnificent opportunity that life provides. And I guess for him it's that glimpse of the universe that makes him treasure every moment that he has alive. If you ever go up into space like that, you're just hoping that the right rocket's going to come on at the right time. Your life is on edge, as with many Americans. So, from one American to another, I don't know if you saw this in the news. This is the man who tried to halt Hurricane Harvey by shooting at it. Did you see about this in Texas? So, again, the idea that nature is coming, but we as people can overcome it. It's the same sort of thing that was happening with King Canute, but in a slightly more ridiculous thing. So what they had to do was to warn the Texans that shooting at a hurricane, which is blowing at 150, 160 miles an hour, is only likely to blow the bullets back at you. And they're like, all right, gotcha. Okay, so what are you saying? Don't shoot. Okay, got it. So it is stupidity, isn't it? And this is an aside, really, but this is a lady taking a selfie with a tsunami in the background. And for me, if you don't believe in God, or you've ever wondered, this for me sums up why I do believe in God. Because if God didn't exist, all the stupid people would have gone by now, wouldn't they? Evolution would have sorted it out. They would have disappeared. But only God would let these people stay alive and walk the earth. So it's an aside. My favorite Twitter feed is the Darwin Awards. If you want it, you can look at that. So what we learn from our opening slides is God is in control, not us. And it says in the Bible, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And there's a little story in Jonah about how God sends an easterly wind. So there is a sense that this mad Milky Way universe, huge place that we live in, where everything is moving, everything is blowing around, that actually there is a God that is still in control. And that gives us hope, doesn't it? Because otherwise, if we take a completely atheistic view, we're left with like, what hope is there in the world? At any point, some meteor could come in and destroy us all. But knowing that God is in control gives us hope. My next illustration is bang up to date, Hannah. 1755. On the 1st of November 1755, a massive event happened. This is in the time of Isaac Newton, when he was discovering gravity and all the rest. And at that time, in Lisbon, it was the 4th most successful city in Europe. It was a very popular city. It was a growing city. It was the center of all the commerce. There it was in Lisbon. And it was also a very religious place. So the 4th largest city in Europe, it was known as a pious city, lots of devout Christians. And the 1st of November was All Saints' Day. So it's the day after Halloween, All Hallows' Eve. And All Hallows was the 1st of November, the day after the Eve. And so all of the religious types went to church on the 1st of November. The very religious types went at sunrise. So they went at 6 in the morning. The king of the area went to sunrise worship, and then he left, he went away. But other people went to the 9:30 service that day, and the 9:30 service was the more popular one, and thousands of Christians went to this Lisbon, all the different cathedrals, basilicas, churches, they were full, rammed. This was a big religious occasion. And at 9:40 on that day, a huge earthquake happened, and it opened up the streets with 5-meter gaps in there, and 85% of the buildings were completely destroyed, including the cathedrals, the basilicas, and the churches. The earthquake took place over about 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes, just about every Christian in Lisbon was killed. All of them. The only people that really didn't get killed were the ones who were getting drunk the night before, or who were in the bars, and they didn't wake up for church. And so the unrighteous lived, and the righteous died. It was a terrible event. And not only that, it was in one of the most busy cities with ships going in and out. And so everyone heard about this story. Not only did the earthquake happen, but those who survived thought, right, we're going to get away from the city. We're going to run down to the shore where there's no buildings. So they ran to the shore. Thousands of people went to the shore for safety. And when they got there, the water had disappeared. It'd gone out, and they could see ships that had been sunk by the English over the course of the century. They could see chests and everything. You can read all about it. And as they looked out, we know what happens because we remember the tsunami from 2004. But what had happened was the water had been sucked back and was about to come flying towards them. And so the water came in at a height of about 3 meters and killed everyone on the shore. And then, if you think it hadn't got any worse than that, after the earthquake and the tsunami, a huge fire opened up in the city center where all the damage had been done. And so a fire then ruined Lisbon. And so it's a terrible event, isn't it? It's one of the worst earthquakes in Europe. But the dilemma was, in 1755, in the months afterwards, is, well, why did it happen to such a religious city? And why did all the church people die? And why did the unrighteous live? Because actually the only part that survived was the red light district in the area. So it was a great theological problem for the church, that those that were left. There weren't many left at that point. And it was in the days of Voltaire, and Voltaire, he made the most of this occasion to say, yeah, we need a great enlightenment. We need to move away from this religion, and we need to become more enlightened and learn from people like Isaac Newton over in England. And so that is how 1755, the 1st of November, is why Europe is largely secular. It just changed the whole scope of things. Voltaire and his colleagues all had a great say to say, there is no God in control of things. There is no benevolent God, because we've just seen all of his church wiped out. Can't be true. And the church was stuck. And so that is how we've ended up with Europe as it is, this great earthquake of 1755. What you can draw from it really is that we agree with Voltaire that we don't believe in gods who sends down lightning bolts on people or who destroys people. this sense that God is in heaven waiting to punish people. We don't believe in that either. And so we have to agree with Voltaire, don't we, that there isn't a God like that who's orchestrating thousands of people to die. They reckon a quarter of the city died that day. But what we do look at is how God is holding everything together, and how God comforts those that mourn in their short and brief life. That when we see the righteous suffer, God comforts us and draws close to us. That God heals and God comforts and God comes to people in those suffering times. And so the idea that everything was all good wasn't true. And Voltaire was left saying also, well, actually, if we don't believe there's a God, we probably should invent one anyway, because life is better with him than without, is a strange thing that Voltaire came up with. Now, why do you think that England we didn't lose religion at the same time? Any ideas, any historians amongst us? Who rose up in the 1750s, 60s, and 70s in Britain? John Wesley. And so the amazing thing is, while this hope was being lost and religion was being lost completely in Europe, in England, there was this mass revival. In fact, England wasn't unharmed by this earthquake. The tsunami from Lisbon had hit all parts of the world. It hit Brazil and Africa. It even hit Cornwall, came through with a huge wave into Cornwall. But in Britain, we didn't respond with hopelessness, but with revival. In the same days, millions of people turning to Christ and putting their trust in him. And for that, Britain isn't quite the same as the rest of the countries, is it? In terms of it still has religion at the heart of its state. It still says prayers before Parliament every day. There's amazing things that are there, aren't there, in terms of our heritage and culture that we haven't lost, that were lost in Europe at that time, because all those things were in place in Europe, but were taken apart in the 18th, 19th century, but not in Britain, because of the Wesley revival. Anyway, that was an aside. We'll move on. So the big question was, is it the wrath of God or is it a natural disaster? And what we can learn really is that God doesn't send natural disasters to punish people. That's like some old religion, isn't it? It's like a pagan religion that we've done wrong and therefore God will punish us. And Jesus said the same thing. He was asked the question about a tower that collapsed, possibly through an earthquake as well in his time. And they asked him, of those 18 who died when the tower in Siloam fell on them, do you think they were more guilty than all the others living in Jerusalem? I tell you no, but unless you repent, you too will all perish. So what these great natural events teach us really is we either live without God and live with the hopelessness that comes with it, or we trust God with all our lives. And we trust him in his comfort and his love and his kindness towards us. And if God made all of that universe, then we can trust him to take care of us. We are left with this strange thing, I think it was in Pete Gregg's book, wasn't it, is we're either completely insane believing that we're friends of the creator of the universe, or we're really privileged to be friends with the creator of the universe and to have him look after us and care for us and take care of us in our lives. And suddenly then, if we believe that God is our friend who created the world, praying that our washing stays dry doesn't become so ridiculous, does it? Because God watches over every part of our lives. So, as we're in Britain, let's talk about the rain. This is coming right up to date now, Hannah. 1st of May 2017. We ran a big event, so quite a few of us involved in running that. Sergio was there as well. And we ran this large event. We actually raised some money to spend on the day. We had about £5,000 or £6,000 to spend on this one day. But the trouble with Britain running an event is the rain. Because if you have rain, people don't turn up. And you need people to turn up if you spent £6,000 on a one-day event. So we'd organised a hog roast like for everyone and those things to open up the building that we've taken on there. And the weather forecast, this isn't the actual forecast, we should have saved it. Dan, you'll back me up, won't you? It was one of the worst weather forecasts you've ever seen. You know on your weather app when it shows you what it's going to be like at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock? It went from heavy rain to torrential rain to heavy rain to torrential. It was the worst possible app description that you could have. And so we talked, didn't we, Dan, during the week, like, it's looking really bad. And basically, if you couldn't swim on that day, you'd be heading towards high ground. You'd be getting as far away from low level as you could. But what actually happened was, it was an amazing thing, wasn't it? We didn't make a big thing of it. But all day, it stayed dry. It was a completely dry day until we finished the event. And as we finished the event, it did tip. And all the water came down. But by then, we'd had everything packed away. The pig was eaten and so on. And everyone left happy. We had 300 people through. It was a great day. And we'd been praying for months that we'd have good weather. And we did have good weather. And so God does hear our prayers, doesn't he? He hears our prayers for simple things that we need as we serve him. So natural weather, it does often align with our prayers. Do you agree with that? And it says in the Bible, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Elijah prayed for rain in 1 Kings 18, and the rain came down. We also, just in the Bible, there's loads of unnatural events, aren't there? Loads of miraculous things. I've listed some up there, things that have happened. And I want to take us to one story now, which is a little bit older. But have any of you seen the blockbuster movie, the Dunkirk movie? Did you go and see it? Anyone? A few of you. You don't have to have seen it. It's a well-known story. But on the 26th of May, 1940, as we know, hundreds of thousands, about 400,000 troops were caught on the Dunkirk beaches. And it was a difficult decision to know how to get them out. You all know the story, so I can tell it quite quickly. And through a miracle, really, of a number of things, you know what happened on the days leading up to it? Somehow, Hitler's men, who had tanks up in the north, had got the order to stop their advance down towards Dunkirk to obliterate the remaining Allied forces. And so no one could quite explain how that order happened, but it happened. The second thing that happened was there was a big storm which prevented the Luftwaffe from flying and stopped them from dropping all their bombs on the Allied forces on the beaches. So it was the second thing that happened. The third thing that happened over that 26th of May is, as you know from the movie or from the story, is that on the day when they would be evacuated, all the little fishing vessels and all the vessels that we had in the south of England trooped over to Normandy, rescued 330,000 troops, and brought them back. On that day, the sea was completely still. It was like a sheet of glass, enabling all the ships to get over and get them all safely back again. 3 things happened that was amazing. Now, when you look at those things, you think, well, was it a miracle? It's described as a miracle by Churchill, wasn't it? Was it a miracle? Was it a coincidence? Was it a natural thing? And what had happened, you probably know this as well, but in the days before, on the 23rd of May, the Sunday, King George VI had said to Churchill, let's host a national day of prayer. It's one of the last national days of prayer that we've had in the country. And on that day, there's pictures of it you can see. The churches were full, the cathedrals were full, people swamped in to pray for the Allied forces and to pray that they would be saved. And so thousands, millions of people in this country on that National Day of Prayer gathered and prayed. And you could argue that the miracle was probably on that National Day of Prayer more so than on the 26th of May 1940. And so miracles do happen, don't they, as well? We need to encourage ourselves that prayer really does work, that miracles happen, that lives were saved at Dunkirk, hundreds of thousands. And if we believe that God heard our prayers, the prayers of the generation gone before, it's an amazing thing to say, I couldn't go on the boat, but I did pray, and I was really pleased to see the boys come home. It's a great national story, isn't it, in there? So these are the 4 things I've run down. That God is in control. God doesn't wield lightning bolts to punish people. Natural weather does align with our prayers quite often, and miracles do happen. And the last thing I was going to look at really was, we sung it in one of the songs, didn't we, how earth is crying out for death to end, for this suffering to end. And one day God says there will be no more suffering, no more pain. And we're looking forward to that day, aren't we? But if we're people of hope and we believe that day will come when all is well, when there is no more suffering and pain, when earthquakes aren't seeing terrible things happen around them and hurricanes and disasters and floods, that if the earth itself is praying and groaning for the day when death ends, and it says in this verse in Romans 8 that creation waits in eager expectation for the sons, the children of God, to be revealed. And what it means is that you and I have the great privilege of the earth waiting for us to be revealed, for us to be people of prayer, seeing extraordinary things happen through our prayer, us being people of hope, us being people who do comfort people in their loss, people that are able to bring God's love to a situation. That the earth is crying out for that to happen. It's a great privilege for us to have that, isn't it? That's what it says. And so when we see the natural disasters around us, it should trigger us to think, I need to be revealed. I need to be a person who is praying and moved to pray. I need to be a person who's full of hope, a person who's full of comfort and courage. And people will notice that we are people that carry that hope. People don't miss that because people want it to be revealed. The last thing I was going to say was an extraordinary thing happened when Jesus died and rose again. Lots of extraordinary things happened when he died and rose again. But it was one time when 2 earthquakes happened in 3 days. There was an earthquake when Jesus died, and there was an earthquake when Jesus rose again. It's quite an amazing thing, isn't it? When you think about what we've been talking about, how creation is groaning, the sons of God to be revealed, that on those historic days of Jesus' death and resurrection, the earth shook. Said, come on. Such an exciting thing, isn't it, to think actually this galaxy we're in, where many people can look at it and think life is meaningless, I don't get what it's all about, that actually the meaning is in this person of Jesus who died and rose again, who came to comfort those who mourn, came to strengthen the weak, and to give hope to people who feel despairing. And so for us, we can get a bit ashamed about talking about Jesus' death and resurrection, but when we see it as really pivotal in the whole of creation to bring hope, to bring life, to bring resurrection power to people's lives, it's an amazing privilege that we carry that story, isn't it? And so it's more than just praying that our washing doesn't get dry when we hang it out on the line. It's about us being people that carry hope for this world, and people see that we believe that God is our friend. Amen.